You're watching VATV, bringing Brookline.
Hello, I'm Karma Kitai, and I'm your host for Alivelihood, New Adventures as We Age. And today we're going to talk to two people who are part of a wonderful network called the Life Planning Network. So we're going to talk with Meg Newhouse and Natalie Eldridge. Hello.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here. So we're going to be talking about something that has been very near and dear to our hearts for a long time.
Indeed.
And that is a new book that is called what?
Live Smart After 50,
Yes.
The Expert's Guide to Life Planning for Uncertain Times.
Yeah. And all three of us, plus about 30 other people from the Life Planning Network, have been involved in this project. So it's been a wonderfully collaborative project, hasn't it?
It has been wonderful. And if you're interested, I could kind of tell you the story
About how it
came
about.
to be.
Because that's a question I had. I never knew why.
Yeah.
Or how.
Well, I think the first place we have to start with the story is the Life Planning Network, which is a wonderful organization founded by Meg Newhouse, and with a small group of people, 11 years ago?
Yes, in 2002, March.
Wow. Yeah. And it's an organization, a professional organization of people who, of professionals who work in many ways with people in their second half of life, or 50-plus people, or boomers, whatever name you want to use, but people who are re-envisioning their lives and thinking about how to plan the second half. And what's unique about the organization that drew me to it is that there are many people from many professions there who work with this population. So there are therapists like myself, there are coaches, which I also do, there are lawyers who work with older folks, there are people who work with real estate, and people who work with financial planning and financial management.
And health care.
Fitness, health.
Yeah. So there's many professions represented in the organization. So that's where it starts. I don't know if you want to say more about the organization.
Well, partly just that the reason we are the only thing of its kind in the country, and our model is holistic, and that's why we include so many professions, because we think all the parts of life have to be considered when you're thinking about how you want to make the most of the rest. And so that's very unique and very central to our mission.
Yeah. So New England, the New England chapter, of course, was the first chapter, but now we have chapters in various parts of the country as well.
Right.
So it's really grown, huh?
Yeah.
It's grown across the country. And it was one of our esteemed members, Carlene McKay, from the West Coast, who, in a discussion of how we can get our wisdom to a greater audience, said, write an ebook. something.
It's easy.
It's
she
easy.
Said.
She had done it, and she found it easy, and she planted the seed. So some of us got together and talked about, was this feasible? And my own involvement was actually interesting because I had been thinking about creating an ebook on my own website, but I didn't know how to begin to do it. So when I heard that LPN was thinking about doing an ebook, I said, oh, I want to be involved.
And you wanted to figure out how to do it.
That's
for
right.
Your
and
website.
I'll convene the meeting. And
right, and little did she know that she would become the head of the core editorial team of 6 people.
That's right.
Who, good night, they just spent so many hours, and Natalie and Bruce Frankel especially took incredible responsibility, particularly in the last stages. But we did also have 33 authors, because we put out, we said, if you're interested in doing this, one of our big values in LPN is collaboration, and so this was a test of that value for sure.
So the writers in this book are all members of LPN, and they're all volunteering hours of time to write from their professional perspective about planning after 50. And they've all had to go through 3 to 4 edits of their chapter. Some of them wrote a chapter on their own. Some gathered a small group of people together to collaborate on a chapter. So there were a lot of different ways that the writing happened.
Right.
But it was a very collaborative and wonderful process, and everybody is volunteering their time for the organization.
Right. Yeah. So let me ask you this question. Why life planning? So why not just, work at your job till you're 65, 68 or whatever, and, people are very busy at their jobs often, especially these days, right? They might work 60 hours a week, and they don't maybe even give a thought to what's next.
Right.
So why plan?
Well, I think that if you're intentional, and it's being intentional about who you are and what you want, and thinking about, as I said before, all these aspects of your life and how they interrelate. If you're thinking ahead and preparing for them, you can make much better choices, take much better advantage of opportunities that come up, meet challenges from a proactive place instead of just freezing when something happens and not knowing what to do. And you can create a more, I believe, a more fulfilling and contributing life by being thoughtful and proactive. I'm sure there's some other reasons you can think of too.
Well, I think sometimes in images, and one of my images is that the map we have as a young person, I did a lot of work with college students in career planning, so kind of like life planning. And the plan you make early on is not necessarily the best plan to be following in your 50s and 60s, because life changes. So the life planning process, first of all, suggests that we stop and look at where we are
And who we are.
And begin to redraw the map. Some pieces will be the same, perhaps, but other things will change.
Right.
And the image that I have about this book, I hope this works for people, but it's like the life planning process for us as we grow older is like this huge room with many doors. And each of the chapters of this book is a different doorway into that very rich room. So some people will feel comfortable coming in through a money management doorway because that's an important aspect for them or where they are right now. Somebody else may come in this other doorway that has to do with spirituality or finding a purpose, and somebody else will come in through a fitness or wellness doorway. But they all come into the same room, and this book is like that room. And you can start with any chapter to enter in.
Actually, that's a great
Yeah,
image.
I like that.
And we could maybe mention that people can go to our website, our book website, Live Smart After 50, www.com, and take a readiness quiz and kind of see where they might want to, which room or which doorway they might want to start with. And you really can. And I like that image also because, again, you can't think about your wellness if you don't think, they're all interrelated. Your finances, your wellness, your creativity, your purpose, it's all related, and you just you get to it one way or another.
Yeah, I like the image that you just put out here, Natalie, though, because I think when I was reading the book, even though I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the pieces, having been to many Life Planning Network meetings where we have wonderful people come, including some of us, and present in their area of expertise. But when I was reading it, you know, chapter by chapter, I thought, ooh, this is a lot. This is a lot to take in. But if you think of it as being like a room with doors, and, well, this door might be calling me at this time of my life, maybe the legacy door, or the spirituality door, or the wellness, or legal, or whatever it is, you know, I think it makes it more comprehensible to me. And so that's just a way that some of our readers might use the book.
Something I've discovered since the book's been published, the official publication release date was in January for the print book. And there's now, as of about a week ago, an
There's
e-book.
finally the e-book.
Yes, an e-book, which one can
We
get.
started with the e-book, but then we got convinced to do a print book, and it ended up coming first.
Yeah. But, oh, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. That happens. It'll come around again, though.
I know.
Oh, yes, I remember. So, as a therapist and a coach, I work with a lot of people, and I have found it so useful to recommend a chapter of this book for different people at different times. Not only because reading the chapter will give them kind of a handle on the particular thing that they're facing, but also it's so full of resources so that they can dig deeper and get a lot more information. So it's been a wonderful resource, and I never thought I'd be using it as much as I have.
I've heard this from many people, actually.
Yeah.
So let's dig a little more deeply into some of the chapters. So I know the chapter that you've been, or both of you were involved with. And so you, aside from doing what you did, was being at the helm of the editorial group, you also...
I also contributed to Meg's chapter and some to Andrea's chapter in the beginning.
Yeah, we all.
Yeah. So since you both know about that chapter, and that's one of my favorites, by the way. You know, I told you I have 3 or 4 favorites. And so let's talk a little bit more about what's in there, what people can expect to get from that chapter.
Well,
Go ahead.
Want me to start? When we started talking about the chapter, we came up with 3 sort of arenas.
Let's give the title.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's a great title. Living in 3D, enrich your life with purpose, legacy, and spirituality.
Right.
Purpose, legacy, and spirituality.
So I'm particularly interested in both spirituality and purpose, and I work with people on those issues, and also write a newsletter called Action on Purpose, kind of how to take action on whatever you really hold or value dear. And I brought some of those ideas to the chapter, for instance, in talking about how to create a daily practice for yourself, a spiritual practice. Because I find so many people, when they look at that, they think of spiritual practices they hear about either from their church or their synagogue or from a Buddhist meditation center. And what I try to do with people is help them look inside. They might draw from those things. But to create a spiritual practice doesn't have to look like something you've seen out there.
Right.
It can be very
What
personal.
fits to you. Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of discussion about how to begin to do that in this chapter.
And I would say, too, that I consider this chapter really fundamental to the book because, and along with an early chapter about knowing who you are and what your values are, because if you're clear about your purpose, what you value, what's really important to you, about maybe what you want to leave behind. That's the legacy piece. What is it that you want to leave behind? And what is your understanding of spirituality or something larger? If you have, if you've thought about those, it is a compass. It's really a compass for the rest of your life and the decisions that you make. So, yeah, we try to give people simple guidelines and make it make it easy to embrace.
Yeah. You know, I just am thinking as you're talking that the last time my spirit group met, I was kind of leading it, and I chose to do it on legacy. I didn't tell you this, Meg, I don't think, but I was surprised because people had a really hard time thinking of the legacy that they want to leave, and I didn't expect that. You know, they could think of legacies that have been left to them. And when we talk about legacy, you know, we're not just talking about material things, money or something. You know, we're really talking about a way that we are.
Exactly.
And maybe our stories.
Yes, exactly.
But I was curious about that, and I wonder, do you have an idea about why it might have been hard for these people to think about?
I do. I think
what they want to leave?
Yeah, when I give workshops, I always start with the legacies people have gotten, and they have no trouble at all. And it's very interesting because they come up with, usually the first things they come up with are those intangible, the who you are, the values, much less than anything tangible, unless it's something that represents the values. I think people, I think they don't think about it a lot unless they're thinking, you know, the dictionary definition of money, and so they don't think about it a lot. They might be a little modest. Oh, I can't, you know, what is it that I could leave of value? They might be kind of, oh, there's so much to do, and you know, what could I, what could I leave? I think it takes a little time for them to be thinking of what was of value to them, to be able then to think of what they want to
translate it in.
Yeah, and I think the stories are important, and the tangible things, because they will last over time. But the tangible things, the stories, the values, the ethical wills or legacy letters, those kinds of things, the heirlooms with notes on them that explain why they're important, the videos, those kinds of things. They're nice, they're important, and they get you reflecting too.
Right. I was wondering whether it's a women's thing. Have you come across that in your workshops, that maybe it's easier for men to think about what they want to leave behind?
Interesting. I mostly get women in the workshops. Well,
It's a good
Hard
question.
to know, I guess.
I really don't
yeah.
know.
Well, so that, I
What
think,
about talking about your chapter? That
about
would
my
be fun to hear.
chapter on
Yeah.
creativity.
Yeah.
Well, when you put the call out to, you know, get people to volunteer for chapters, I said, I'll do the creativity one. And that's because I just, well, recently to me, but it's now maybe almost 3 years ago, got introduced right here on this show to what really blossomed and became my, you know, kind of accessing my creative self. So I interviewed someone here named Sandra Schumann, and she she is a creativity coach and artist, and she invited me to her studio after our interview. And I said, oh, sure, I'll try. And I've probably taken a few classes when I was in my 20s or something at an adult education center, but I never got hooked on it. And so I went to her studio, and I just loved it. So she just, introduced me to her, all the materials, and just let me play. So the chapter on creativity is about play, leisure, creativity, and learning. I'm not sure why all of those go together, and it was a challenge to pull them all together. In one little 13 or 15 page chapter.
That's right. Yeah, that was a challenge of the book in a way, because we had to make doorways. People couldn't enter just anywhere, so we had to put some things together. Really, everything is connected, but we had to put some things together to make the doorway.
Yeah. So even though I certainly haven't considered myself an expert on creativity, I was so enthusiastic about it that I thought, oh, this will be fun. So, I read a lot of things and interviewed people and brought in some of our, people in LPN who are, creative types. And, I think we came up with a good piece.
Well, it's one of the really fun chapters because it represents so much the opportunity that we have in this second half of life to do some things that we haven't done before, to develop parts of ourselves that we haven't, to be who we are. So I think that's a chapter that's really fun to read. There are many of them, but there's some really important ones that are harder to read because, well, in my opinion anyway, they're the ones that people kind of want to avoid. They're the scary ones, like caregiving or finances or legal, although I guess, most people do at least minimal financial planning, but those they're heavier chapters, but they're so important because, boy, if you don't do it, you can be in such big trouble. And planning earlier is so much better than planning later.
Yeah, and those are, as you say, those are the chapters that I probably avoided a little bit and skimmed. But certainly, if you're in the room and you need to open a door because you know that there's some issue coming up about your finances that you might not have expected, then, going into one of those chapters is really going to be very useful. And the other thing about the book, I think, is that there are a lot of resources at the end of every chapter and also in the appendices, right? For people to use worksheets. And so it's really user-friendly, I guess you'd say.
User-friendly.
I can actually tell a little story about the caregiving chapter because Bruce Frankel has been a very central part of the editorial committee too. And so he was in fact, he even edited the caregiving chapter. So he was very familiar with the issues. Recently, very recently, his mother, who had been living independently, got ill, very ill, and ended up with heart valve replacement. He went right to the book and to the resources, and he said, I don't know what I would
What should I do?
I knew this, but I had to go to this book, and it helped me so much in setting up the changes he had to make for her.
Well, so there are other chapters that are, I think, more fun to read. The one on well-being, I like that a lot. And I've been someone that I think has been pretty adept at self-care taking.
Yeah.
So I certainly resonated with it, but there's a lot in there that really gives people, a lot of good guidelines about how to start taking care of yourself better.
Yep.
If you haven't thought about it much.
Yep.
And I meet so many wonderful people here in this show. But one of the people I interviewed, Mary Stevenson, you know Mary, she had been an economics professor, and when she went into sort of semi-retirement from teaching, she thought, well, gee, maybe it's time now to start taking care of my body. And she really had never exercised in a regular way, but she got really hooked on it, and she started taking all these certifications in teaching people over a certain age to exercise.
Well, there's a nice little serendipity actually there too. So I introduced Mary to Mo Lanier, who is the author, one of the authors of the wellness chapter, who has created, as her second encore career, has created a training gym called Greatest Age Fitness. And I like the term fitness because one of the things she stresses in the book is the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, cognitive, and she and her staff focus on the holistic piece of wellness. But Mary is now teaching Nia and Zumba Gold at that
wonderful.
gym. Yeah,
Wonderful.
So it's really fun.
Nice
so there's all these nice little interconnections,
Right. Yeah, and she has joined LPN.
Good for her. She's been my neighbor for
Oh my goodness!
30 years or something.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Oh,
Small
my
world.
goodness. Forgot about that.
Small world. Well, speaking of all the resources in here, I just would want to share that there's a website for the book called livesmartafter50.com. And on that website, even before one buys the book, you can get on there and take a lot of the exercises, the self-assessment exercises, things about money assessments, health-related things. So there's a lot of tools you can access for free to get a feel about what's in the book.
Right.
And I encourage viewers to do that. Check it out online.
That's a great point. Yeah, so people should really go to the website first.
That's right.
And there's a lot of things that they can begin to do to start their life planning, even before purchasing the book.
And those who prefer to read an electronic book, either on a Kindle or a Nook or on their computer, they should know that there's the ebook version. It looks great. And one of the benefits is that if you want to go to a resource, you just click it and you're there.
I know. Yep,
You get all the information.
Okay, well, we're going to have to close.
Okay.
Oh, too bad.
So I hope that people will get encouraged by the book.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
been great fun.
It's been great.
Okay, so join me next time when I will have a new guest on Alivelihood, New Adventures as We Age.